I have ADHD, and I thought I would just share some of my reflections on comics and ADHD. I haven't seen this like talked about a lot, but I'm just basing this off of my own experiences with ADHD and some of the things that I've found where like I have so much more of an interest in reading now, and I'm able to get over some of the things that had previously really restricted me in terms of what I was reading. Prior to me getting into comics, I was primarily reading either ebooks on my e-reader or I was reading audiobooks, like listening to them. I was really struggling with reading physical books, and there were a few reasons for this, and there were some that I could kind of get through, but I would usually read like half of a novel and like not finish it, especially if it was in that physical format. But I have been reading so many physical books now because I've gotten into comics for things that I think are great. One of the great things is how visually interesting they are. The format is different. There's so much novelty to comics. Every comic that you read is going to have some differences to it. There's this dance between words and pictures. There's so much just exciting visually. It's not just like paragraphs that we're looking at. And we're still reading text, but the way that you read comics, it's different types of reading. You've got like the reading of text, but then you've also got the reading of the picture, and then you've got the reading of how do we combine these. And to me, that's a fun little puzzle that you're doing when you're reading comics. I don't think it's easier to read comics. I think it's just a different type of comprehension. I also find with comics, I am much more open to reading things that I would not generally read like a full prose novel about, or I wouldn't generally read somebody's memoir about. But with comics, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll give that a go. I will give so many different things a go, and so I get a lot of variety. There's so much difference, and that is really satisfying to me. It's really satisfying to take in so many different flavors of reading, honestly. Like every single comic, especially when you have like different blends of like who the creator is and who, maybe if it's like a writer and an artist, like there's so many different beautiful combinations within comics that just makes my brain happy. So another thing that I love about comics is if you do zone out, it's really easy to figure out where you were because you've kind of spent some time, at least for me, I've spent some time like noticing what's going on in the picture. So just visually, it's really easy for me to figure out where I kind of lost my way and go through things again. Another thing that I like with things like graphic novels or graphic memoirs, or volumes is you're probably going to finish them faster than you would a prose novel. And I think that gives us a little bit of a reward. You know, it's like, hey, I feel accomplished. I read this book. Or like I finished this issue, or I finished this section. And it kind of acts similar to like the way chapters would, but I think the reward is there with those things, but it's also there with like every transition to a new picture for me. There's all those little transitions that give us little like hints of, hey, I've accomplished something, I'm moving on. And I find that very satisfying. So one other thing that I really like is the textures of comics. Like this compendium, the flop, so good. The the pages feel so good. The Yeah, some of them are just nice and glossy, some of them are kind of papery, but there's just good textures all around in general with a lot of comic stuff. I have found that a lot of prose novels or other physical books lately, they've been messing around with those textures on some of the book covers, and I cannot. Like, I am just revolted by the textures of some of them. Usually it's just the cover, it's not like the inside. But fortunately, thus far, knock on wood, I have not encountered many comics that I cannot stand physically. I think Snot Girl, actually, I looked at, and it has like kind of a weird cover. But kind of more of an exception than the rule. So I have also found that the momentum with comics helps me just with doing other reading as well. So reading prose, reading other physical books, things like that. It has helped me a little bit with that. So I think it's just that training our brains to in that focus side of things. The more we kind of get in the swing of things, I think the more it's easy to get back into reading, specifically if we're struggling with it being fun, or if we've had a few years where we maybe really haven't finished a book. I can totally relate. So I really think this is something to play around with if you haven't. So now I want to talk about some of my tips for if you are getting into comics with ADHD, some of the things that I think might not be so great, or some things that may possibly help you. ADHD does not mean that we're all going to have the same things that work for us. And honestly, with ADHD, sometimes one thing works perfectly for a little while and then it doesn't. So I think it's just good to share tips with ADHD as much as we can, because sometimes you just need to try a new trick on, honestly. Okay, so in my opinion, for one, if you are new to comics, do not start out with some massive series unless it's totally finished and you can get the entire thing. Because I think that one of the big issues with comics, big issues, is the way that they come out in issues. Because it can be very difficult for me to even keep up with like TV shows. When there's like a season that comes out and then another season will come out like 2 years later. And it's like I don't have that same like oomph for it anymore. I've kind of forgotten about it a little bit. And if I'm not like constantly reminded about it, I'm might forget. Granted, like there are some exceptions where like I think if it's something that you really, really like, you may be kind of more on the ball with it. But for starting out, I would start out more in the graphic novel area of things, the graphic memoirs, or a short series. I would try and figure out what you like from the things that you can read that are more self-contained. Try a few very, very different things and just kind of see what you like in terms of styles and in terms of different creators. Um, and just it is reading. Don't make yourself feel bad for reading comics over some other prose novel or something. It is reading. So another thing I will bring up is that with ADHD, it can be common to get into a hobby and get more interested in like getting the supplies for the hobby than actually following through with the hobby. So I would suggest if you're getting into graphic novels and comics, start out with getting like just a few that you are going to read, that you plan on reading, and then build up slowly over time. And also use your library if you can, like absolutely use your library, because for me, libraries add a little bit of a time crunch to the reading. I found when I was first getting into comics that libraries were fantastic for me because I would get a lot of books, but I would have to read them before they were due. And so it put this time crunch on me. It kind of made it into a little bit more of a priority for me. And just be mindful of like possible impulse spending, things like that. One of my big things is just actually remembering if there is a series that I really like, remembering that I want to finish it. So for me, I do prefer to like if I'm gonna read a series, kind of read them together. But if it's something that like then I'm waiting or I am not able to get everything for, I do like to make some notes on books that I read just in general with like my journaling. So I'll just write like a few little things that I enjoyed about it or whatever. If you know when like a next issue is coming out, maybe like mark it in your calendar. Thanks for joining me. Let me know what your thoughts are on comics and ADHD. Do you read comics and have ADHD? Do you just struggle with reading and have ADHD? I'd like to know where you're coming from with this stuff. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye.